would essentially enable us to scale our research and explore topics that we have hitherto underexplored till this point in time. The second one is we also wanted to introduce an executive program, which will be one program among a few others that we might be introducing in the future, that is targeted at business leaders to skill themselves about how to develop an AI strategy. As the world moves more and more towards using these technologies, and as AI becomes a source of competitive advantage, these programs such as these would play a very important role to skill business leaders in terms of developing their AI strategies. So this collaboration is about jointly designing programs and delivering them as well jointly to business leaders of tomorrow. So we would be introducing these two initiatives today. A very warm welcome to the members of the media as well, and my faculty, some of my faculty colleagues who are here too. So I would now like to call Mr. Anand Maheshwari, President of Microsoft India, to talk about leading with AI. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I'm just checking if the mic is on, if you can hear me at the back. Excellent. So first of all, really honored to be here at the launch of this initiative. I truly believe this is setting the trend of how academia and business need to come together in creating the new age capabilities that both sides will need in moving forward. So in the next 10 minutes, my aim is just to set the context of why this is important, why it is now, and what can be potentially achieved with this as we go forward. So first up, let me just go back many years and look at an image in front of you. This could be a street anywhere in a city in the world, and this actually was an image in the early 20th century, wherein in that image you see many forms of the technology of that time, which is you see electricity, you see steam, you see some infrastructure, automobiles that really were coming together as the technology at that time, and it was visibly changing the face of what that street looked like. You cut to today and you look at the same street and it changes. And you basically start seeing that change. And you go back to this quote from Mark Weiser, who was the father of ubiquitous computing. And he had said that the most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. And to me, that's so powerful to even think about this, because if you look at this street and you look at technologies that you can see, it's just a lot of color and maybe shapes and forms have changed, but you can see a lot of that together. But what you don't see is the fact the world is a computer. And there is so much computing that is distributed on that street that you don't see. Computing is ubiquitous, computing is around us. Each of you right now may be carrying at least 2 computers. You definitely touch or use or get use of nearly maybe 10 computers in the day, starting from the morning breakfast that you may have with your refrigerator helping you in the process, and some capability in an oven or in the way you transition in a computer on the roads, which is on 4 wheels, and then you move through the day and you touched many computing devices in your workplace, while still continue to communicate through a computer all through the day. So computing is all around us, and we have to ask the question: how did this happen? What changed to make computing so ubiquitous? So research was done on this in the University of Toronto, and really and seen from the lens of economics as to why this happened. And they basically created this cost curve for computing. And the cost curve for computing, sorry, just checking if the clicker is working. No, it's not. So if you can just click this. Okay. Just the cost of computing as it transitioned from 80s to 2020. In 40 years, the cost curve basically allowed computing to become ubiquitous. And if you look at it, all the sectors around the world really benefited from that computing revolution. The University of Toronto professors who did this then said, okay, now the next generation is coming, which is the cost of a prediction. Because that's what AI is. It's a prediction. And what is the cost of a prediction? And if you take the cost curve, what will that cost curve look like in the time to come? And they took that cost curve and applied it. And the thing that changed is the timeline. It was 40 years for computing. It is 8 years for a cost of prediction. So this is going to happen in our lifetimes. This is not for the next generation. This is here and now. And to make it very real for each one of you as to how a prediction is something that you use around yourself every day. I'm sure many of you are texting on your mobile every day. You write a message on your mobile phone every day. And this device, this computer, predicts what you're about to write. It corrects what you particularly write on a normal basis. It's helping you. It's a cost of prediction of what you are doing. And that is free. It's available to you. So that's where AI and ML is, machine learning is manifesting itself in our day-to-day lives. It is empowering us. Because today, it's very likely that if you go back 3 years when you started texting a lot, or 5 years when you started texting a lot, you were careful about it, you checked the message before you sent it, and you made less mistakes. Today also, you actually tend to maybe making more mistakes, but you're able to get a lot more messaging, a lot more communication out in very different forms. So you are empowered to communicate and message a lot more today than you were in the past. And that's how AI comes around us to help us. So cost of prediction is the fundamental economic principle around which we expect this is going to happen. Then the question you've got to ask is, why is it happening now? Because it was in the early 50s and 60s that Alan Turing actually wrote the paper on artificial intelligence. And at that time in the 60s, they actually collected the best AI experts around the world. They got it all together in MIT and they said, we are going to create the next generation AI. But they could not. And this has been tried over the last 60 years, from 60s to now, to really get AI going. So why now? Why is it happening now? Multiple revolutions have come during that time. The PC, the web, the mobile, and now the AI revolution is around us. It is very simple if you then again look back at economics and what's happening around us. I refer to it as the ABC of AI, and that's why it is coming together. First is just the analytics. The software capability to really create AI and leverage it and do that prediction is now at a level where it makes much more economic and business and operational sense to use it. Second is big data. There is enough data now to make AI work. Just to give a quick sense of what it is, there will be about 44 zettabytes of data within the next 18 months on the planet. Today, it's somewhere in the teens. So literally the data will multiply as we go along. And that data can now be used with that analytics. But these two need a massive computing capability which is available on tap. And that is the cloud. A cloud capability of great computing but at an affordable cost. And therefore if you really look at the analytics, the big data and the cloud, it's the ABC coming together, and that's why it's happening right now as AI grows up. Just going forward and looking at how is AI getting adopted, and we run this survey across Asia to look at how AI is getting adopted in the enterprises. So 91% of enterprises said they will use AI in the next 3 years. So this is a given that everybody will use AI. However, only 37% have started or are now in the process of starting to actually use it in their business. So you ask yourself, why is this delta between that 91% and the 37%? What's holding people back? And that research showed that more than half the time what's holding people back is the lack of right skills. So skilling in the field of AI is very, very critical. Second, everybody wants to do it but really don't know how to do it or what to do with it. And that's defining the strategy for use in their own businesses with AI. And finally, you know in a way that I want to use it in operations or finance and therefore I want to work it, but what's the real use case? What do I work on immediately? And therefore, those are the three pieces that came out as the need for businesses to start using AI. And to me, that really is critical to see how it moves forward. The other piece in this technology is to think through some basic principles that how the AI should be developed, because it is relatively new for the world. And Microsoft has had a very strong point of view on the principles in which AI should be developed. There was this book that was released some time back called The Future Computed. And the premise and the thesis of that book is to say that AI should be really focused on innovation. So you're really working through tech breakthroughs with AI. You are secondly focusing on empowerment. So democratize AI. When I talked about that simple machine learning algorithm on your phone, it's empowering you to do more. And it's also empowering somebody who may not be great on the hold of a language. And therefore is empowering that person to also be able to send a message that is very similar to the quality of message that somebody who knows that language very well and can send out. So it empowers people to do a lot more, and human ingenuity is actually encouraged with the power of AI. And finally, ethics. Very critical to look at core principles that should drive AI. So core values are very important in developing AI as we go forward, so that it is fair, it is reliable and safe, it is inclusive, it is transparent, and it is accountable. So I think it's very important to have those principles of ethics that we need to have in the development of AI. Having this kind of magnitude of issues and areas that we need to work on and develop, I feel really glad that we're thinking about the AI business school capability, and therefore standing in ISB here today, I'm really excited that if you really ask what should a business school in AI be trying to do, it is definitely to help those companies think through AI strategy, empowering people to think through AI strategy. It is creating a culture which can use AI with the right principles. It is debating what are the ethical implications and finding the next level of knowledge there. And finally, imparting the basic skills to the business leaders or emerging business leaders on AI. And that is really the partnership that we are launching today, the two initiatives that were mentioned. It is the focus and the course of leading business transformation in the age of AI, and the AI Digital Lab, which is really the cutting edge research that we'd like to do together going forward in solving many of these questions that I raised earlier in my talk. So with that, I would just like to remind ourselves of a quote that was said it's said in many forms, that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And I think as we think about what this institution ISB does, it is both leadership and learning in really developing both. And how we bring that together with the partnership with business is something that I'm really excited with the opportunities here. I'd like to close why it is important for us as Microsoft. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on this planet to achieve more. There is no technology inside that mission. It is really a human mission to do something, and I really feel that with this initiative, we are taking one more step forward in realizing our mission. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Anand.
Thank you very much, Anand, for putting the promise of AI in perspective and why the future is so promising insofar as AI is concerned. I'd like to invite our Dean, Professor Rajendra Srivatsava, to sort of talk about the partnership between ISB and Microsoft in detail. So over to you.
Thank you, Anand. This is a really perfect setup. I wish I could have had you at a board meeting for the ISB board 2 weeks ago. The board has asked us, the faculty to come up with a plan for ISB 2.0. What are we going to be doing differently? And if we take our disciplines, finance, marketing, etc., information systems, we take our research centers and institutes, whether it's the Center for Analytical Finance or it is the Max Healthcare Institute. So if you think of a cube, the disciplines, the research centers and institutes, and the third dimension of the cube being the programs. There are two dimensions that cut across that are common, and one is innovation and the other is digital. And you put all that in perspective, and it's really incredible for us to be working with Microsoft. We're delighted that you are neighbors. I think we got here a year or two before Microsoft did. Want to tell a small story. About 7 years ago, I was in Singapore, and there were 6 German university presidents visiting, and I was hosting the dinner. The conversation got around to academic development, and they started talking about shared professors. And I thought the Germans could not pronounce shared very well, so they were saying shared. It turned out they were really talking about shared professors. These were faculty that were shared between Daimler-Benz and University of Stuttgart, between SAP and St. Gallen University, etc. And so I followed that up. They actually invited me to come to Germany. I went to Germany, went to Switzerland, and there were laboratories and doctoral students and faculty that were co-funded by the university and the industry. Now, it is therefore no surprise that the work that got done in those labs was driven by the practical problems that were being faced, whether it was automotive design or it was use of information. So we academics like to talk about theory-driven practice. And what I learned during that short trip and from these 6 university presidents was the value of use-inspired theory. So let's look at reality and then look at what are the theoretical developments that are needed. So when we start looking at AI, AI is really looking at information and trying to gather patterns from it, but the patterns is not just looking at the past. I think for AI to be useful, it needs to have predictability, because the challenges that are faced by industry, by academic institutions, etc., are very often related to the future. And the charts that you were showing that in what the change that took place in one area in 40 years is going to happen in 8 years. I have some colleagues in information systems who tell me that the rate of change itself is accelerating, and the rate at which we are doubling information, doubling insight and knowledge has come down from 250 years to 30 years to 3 years. And so there's so much more information that is available, and we need to be able to look at what kind of changes that we can make. So with the rapid rate of change and with this notion that there's value to collaboration. And you look at areas, fintech, Professor Bhagwan Chaudhary is here, he's leading the fintech charge. And what is happening in industry, the technology is there, the data is there, the people is there. And I think in the old days, the narrative would be that, okay, we will do research, we will then publish papers, which will go into a textbook, and then we will take it into the classroom. And that was the cycle from learning to implementation. And we need to do it in parallel with industry. So I'm delighted that we have this opportunity to do that. The two initiatives that are here, they're both critical to ISB. So one is the learning part, bringing AI into business. We, of course, being a business school, have the responsibility of bringing in new methods, new ways of thinking into the decision-making environment. And this requires a little bit of fresh thinking. And so when I look at what is happening at ISB itself, if I take, whether I'm taking fintech, or I'm looking at a healthcare program, or we're looking at supply chain issues, these are all already driven by data and by analytics. And the question is, how do we build it into a curriculum? And so that curriculum is going to require, as was pointed out, is going to require use cases, is going to require a level of understanding. Now, when I talk to C-level people, their common refrain is that my young people get it. It's the seniors that need help. So ironically, it is the younger employees that they seem to have a better handle of going on and what's going on. I suspect that might be true amongst faculty also. The younger faculty know more than the more senior faculty. And so we have the challenge of putting it together. And so to us, research and teaching go hand in hand. So while it's looking at two initiatives, business, the schooling part versus the lab part, to us they just go together. And so we already have processes in place. We have an initiative called Digital Identity Research Initiative. We have the Srini Raju Center for Information Technology. We have the Munjal Institute for Global Manufacturing. We're already using these data. Now the question is, can we build it into a curriculum for senior managers? So the torture that we can put our MBA students through is a little different from what we need to do, with very, very senior managers. So it's going to be a challenge, working with Microsoft. But the logic really is, and I think this is what you articulated, Anand, that the better the ability to ask the right questions at the senior management level, and how do we bring in AI and machine learning, and I might want to say more augmented learning, because the data is only looking at the past. In some instances, there is no past, and we have to make some normative decisions. But when we make those normative decisions, we need to be able to do a quick follow through and do the tracking and see whether the assumptions we were making are. So again, we're bringing the analytics in. And what you mentioned about the ethics issue is very critical, because if the data doesn't involve, I think Rohini, you mentioned when you were here last time, that some of the things that you were concerned about is if in the past women were not involved in certain kinds of decisions, and if you used AI to generate a job description, the women, it would come out with white males or brown males or whatever, but no women. So I think the ethical part is very, how we use information, the judicial, decision making from top management is critical. So on behalf of the faculty and the staff, and on behalf of the students, and I might add on behalf of this community, I think this is going to be an incredible start to a much needed joint venture, and we look forward to working with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, for laying out the key principles of the partnership. I'd like to now call upon Dr. Rohini Srivatsa. She's the National Technology Officer of Microsoft India to talk about the Microsoft initiative of AI Business School. So over to you, Rohini.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. So, drawing upon a couple of things that Anand spoke about and the Dean spoke about, let me give a little bit of a click down into what our thinking of for the AI Business School looks like. So, one point Anand mentioned is that data says 91% of executives want to start an AI journey, but a lot fewer, 37% are actually doing it. What is exactly happening is that the people at the C-suite level, at the senior level, don't have a clear picture of what does AI really mean for them and how to drive business value from it. So from a perspective of Microsoft, we are a technology company, but we saw that as a clear gap, that unless executives understand how to drive business value from this technology, and I would actually like to call it more than technology, how really can they imbibe it within their businesses, within their strategy, within their processes. So the idea of an AI business school as a Microsoft concept, it's a concept and that came out was to help senior executives think about AI from an executive level, be able to create an end-to-end AI strategy, think about, after all, strategy is culture eats strategy for breakfast, that's a common business school line, but then create the culture to be able to make it real. And then of course be able to think about technology in the context of the business. So I'll give a little bit of a sense for how the overall program is structured. Again, it's structured along these 4 pillars, that of strategy clearly, culture and responsible AI, and I'll talk a little bit about responsible AI in a bit, and then technology 101. The idea of strategy in this particular case, to one point that the Dean mentioned, it's not very easy to predict the future with the past data because not all of that data even exists. Which is why it becomes important to envision the future. You almost have to think of what might happen. And therefore strategy here becomes a little bit more interesting, I would say, because you have to visualize the future, think of use cases and think about what might that look like. Because you don't actually have data to predict. And therefore then you have to walk backwards from there as to what that means in terms of how your business model may look like, how your operations may look like, etc. Now, having said the fact that you've got a sense for where you're going, clearly it's only a sense, it is not a defined path because technology itself is moving. So you cannot say this is exactly what you will do 6 months later down the line, a whole disruptive trend may happen. The need for culture becomes very, very important because then you have to bring in agility, you have to bring in data-driven thinking, you have to bring in a view that data will say something and when will you listen to the data, when will you question the data, when will you come to your gut and then will you look at what the data is saying. So many of those aspects come into picture. I'll spend a little bit of time without this little bit of an eye chart, but I wanted to put that out as our thinking or our concept in terms of how this might look like. And the amazing thing that I'm looking forward to in the partnership with ISB is to make it come alive. Because at a content level, it is nice, but to be able to make it real for an industry, for India, for a particular customer, for a particular organization, you need to have that immersive experience, which is what I'm really looking forward to this partnership to be able to do for us. So from, like I said, from a strategy perspective, being able to think of what might it look like in financial services, what might it look like in healthcare, and therefore, how do you envision your business to look like, and what does that mean in terms of your strategy? Culture, after all, is a big word, and one can spend a long time discussing it, but the point that we want to bring out from Microsoft's own experiences is to say, how have we thought about our core business functions, whether it is finance, whether it is marketing, sales, in thinking about how you work from a data-driven perspective. So these are ideas, and Anand spoke already about the responsible AI. There is a ethical framework that we work with, and we are happy to discuss with you and ideate with you and understand how that might, poke holes at it and help us think, because we are also learning in this journey. This is a very new topic. The idea of ethics and responsibility in AI is a very, very new topic. So it is a key area of research. In fact, it's an area I know Microsoft Research, there are some people working on the idea of how to even train people, the sociological aspects of training people on ethics, because it has challenges from that perspective as well. And then giving a sense for technology. So the main idea that I would like to leave you here with is that there is an overall concept that Microsoft AI Business School has. What the vision is that we bring an immersive experience within that framework and be able to make it real for people as when they come here to ISB and experience this topic. Thanks.
To Dr. Rohini for laying out some of the key principles of the AI Business School. I would, actually my day job is that of an associate professor in strategy and entrepreneurship. But what I would like to do now is to also talk about, that was meant to be a joke by the way, but nonetheless it didn't go very well. But what I want to talk about is the specific executive program that ISB and Microsoft together would be offering, which is titled as the Leading Business Transformation in the Age of AI. Yeah, it's a complicated title. I will take the credit for that. So the key challenge, so it builds on the AI Business School, the key principles of AI Business School that Dr. Rohini laid out. This is meant for business leaders of tomorrow to sort of come up with a strategy for AI and thinking about some of the cultural and the sociological issues that surround the adoption of AI. So let me step back a little bit. Now, if you think about some of the general purpose technologies that have actually penetrated into our lives today, things like electricity, we take it for granted. Things such as computers that Anand actually spoke about, these actually took a few decades to actually become ubiquitous, right? And today, like Anand spoke about, we don't have that amount of time for these technologies to be ubiquitous. So that implies that business leaders who are thinking about AI need to start today. I mean, they can't afford to wait, they need to get started today. And this program is really targeted at business leaders who can actually get started with an AI strategy. So we already saw from the statistics that were presented earlier that a lot of people want to adopt AI, but they don't know where to start. In other words, they want to adopt AI, but they don't have an AI strategy in place. So what this program intends to do is, this is a non-technical program which would introduce business leaders to AI and enable them develop an AI strategy, and at the same time think about issues that surround the adoption of AI itself. Like, how do you handle big data? What are the privacy and the cultural issues of transforming an organization into a data-driven organization? And many of us have already faced it on a day-to-day basis, and these themes would actually resonate with us. This program is targeted at CXO level people within organizations, and the idea is to enable them to develop an AI strategy which they can actually go out and implement in their respective businesses. So that is the point of the program. A nice feature of this program is that this brings the partnership alive as well. It's going to be co-designed by both Microsoft and ISB and co-delivered by these two respective institutions. So we have the best of breed in both the worlds, right? From a teaching perspective as well as from people who are actually imbibing themselves in AI on a day-to-day basis. So that is what is unique. It's a 3-day program, and there are a couple of highlights about this program as well. For the first time, as in ISB, we would be trying to jointly deliver this program. And one of the aspects of this joint delivery is to put these business leaders through a practical exercise in which they come up with AI solutions to use cases that have already been developed in the past. So let's, for example, there was a particular application of AI that Microsoft did. We would be handing them out as caselets. We would be asking the business leaders to work with people at Microsoft who will also be present there to design solutions for that respective problem, which I think is unique, which also helps these business leaders to actually get started about thinking about AI strategy and some of the cultural issues surrounding AI. So this is what the program is going to be about. It's a 3-day non-technical program which will be sort of delivered physically to business leaders, and hopefully this would seed the transformation of businesses into AI-driven businesses in the future, and make this idea of augmented intelligence more of a reality at this point in time. So that is what the program is about. And I'd be happy to answer questions about the executive program later on. But what I would like to do now is for our Deputy Dean, Professor Milind Sohoni, whose day job is Professor of Operations Management, to talk about the other side, the other initiative under this collaborative effort, which is that of the Microsoft ISB AI Digital Lab. I would like you to talk about that initiative. Over to you, Milind.
That was not a joke. I still Thanks, Andrew. Right, so one of my significant administrative responsibilities at ISB is to take care of faculty development, more on faculty research side. And both professionally to me as an operations researcher, because that's what I do in terms of research, and as well as an administrator that takes care of faculty and research at ISB. I think this lab, this digital lab in artificial intelligence that is being set up is quite incredible, because I have a third dimension that comes that I want to talk about, which the two already that have been spoken about in terms of teaching and in terms of dissemination of knowledge itself. But for me, the big advantage of this kind of a lab is the kind of research that can be enabled at an institution like ISB, and in collaboration, of course, with Microsoft researchers eventually. So, if you just think about the transition over time that Anand talked about and showed that the speed at which computing power has increased, and today it's ubiquitous. So has research related to looking at these kinds of questions, particularly in management science and social sciences, has changed. So almost maybe a decade back or a little earlier than that, data, at least in areas like mine, was an afterthought. We would build models, we would make assumptions about the processes that generated the kind of data, and then build these trade-offs into some mathematical formulation, some mathematical model, and then use data to validate our model and validate the assumptions that we make. However, with the kind of computing power that we're talking about today and the ability to harness this kind of data in all forms, not just numbers. I mean, today the kind of data that we get in is in all shapes and forms. Data is no longer an afterthought, it's almost a precursor. To the extent that the entire shift has been from not trying to guess and model earlier, but try to look at the data and try to figure out what is the underlying process that comes to bear that could have generated this kind of data. And then try to figure out what would be the apt model to build over that in order to start making decisions. And to me, this is a very fundamental shift in the way we will be conducting research going forward. Right? It's no longer going to be the fact that I made these assumptions, I have this model, it's and it works right because when I feed it the data, it shows up the results. That's not how research is going on. And the entire fields of management science and the quantitative sides of management science are moving in this direction. And in that kind of setup, this AI lab is a great advantage for us, because the skills that we don't have or we may be lacking in terms of the technical capabilities of building these algorithms, having ready access to them, worrying about computing and how do I set up all of this infrastructure in order to do this kind of work, that's being readily made available to me through this lab. It's almost a virtual lab, like virtual collaboratory right now, that is just accessible to every faculty of mine, including me. And I think that is quite exciting because this allows me now to be up and running almost instantaneously. It's a virtual world that I can just simply log into, have access to all of this technology, and as Microsoft researchers, they using their expertise are building better and better algorithms and different ways of thinking about solving some of these problems. That is also becoming readily available. So at a very basic level, I think this could be a significant research productivity enhancer for the folks that are working in these kinds of areas and doing this kind of work. But just beyond that, right? I mean, think of the kinds of skills that management science researchers that live in a business school have, and computer scientists and other related researchers that sit in research labs in Microsoft and even elsewhere. I think this gives us an opportunity to bring all of them together in this virtual world, right? So the kinds of questions that one can start asking, the kinds of skills that one can bring to bear in order to solve some of these incredibly hard problems, right? And many of these are not like science and engineering, right? I mean, you really have to get a lot of data, try to make sense of it, use various statistical and mathematical techniques in order to start deciphering and creating information out of that, and then developing any insight thereafter. So you will require all these skills, and I think this lab provides us that opportunity to start bridging this gap between academic research and industry research and corporate research. Now, there are a whole bunch of questions that still remain unanswered because we do have to worry about how do we create this ethical environment, how do we worry about security, how do we worry about keeping information intact and correct. So all those will be sorted out over a period of time, but I think this platform just helps us get there. So that to me is a very exciting feature of this lab, not just personally as a researcher, but also being made available to our faculty. And eventually, I guess there will be many who will join such a collaboratory, and we will probably have a much larger community that are working on some of the most critical problems for businesses, governments, and society. So I just see a big win-win situation right over here. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Just a quick introduction. My name is Purnima. I represent the communications team at Microsoft India, and it's a pleasure to be here on this special occasion. So we'll now open the floor for questions from the media. I'd first like to invite all the speakers on stage, please. And members of the media, thank you for being here. And as you ask your questions, please introduce yourselves, your name, and the publication that you represent. And we would have all our speakers here, so if you would like your question to be addressed to anyone in particular, please mention that as well. We have mics around, so.
This is to Anand actually.
Anand for Anand. Me?
From Microsoft
Yes.
and from ISB too. Both delight us. Essentially, many of us are financial journalists, so it's important for us to understand how does, in this process, the business model for you work? Because I'm sure it's not just one school that you'll be engaging with for this.
So this, let me just clarify. To me, I can't predict what the future will hold, but I definitely believe that this will be unique in the way it is set up. Because of the two big levels, as was mentioned, it goes together. It is the school, the lab, and the research that will come along with it, and that we will evolve as we go with the focus that ISB has on research. And so to me, those three things will come together to do this. At this point in time, I'm not really thinking about this as a business model. I'm really thinking it about as a part of our mission. which is to empower every person and every organization. And in this case, I do believe that we will be able to, along with ISB, empower a lot of individuals and a lot of organizations. I'll pass it on to the ISB leadership.
Well, I think from our side it is really moving a little bit from what we may call best practices to next practices. Our goal is really, if you think of ISB's goal, it's one of differentiation itself. You know, what can we do that is better? When I use the word innovation, it's not necessarily technology. Innovation to me is how do we find ways to do things better. You could be innovative in your HR strategy. And we could be actually using data, we could learn ways of using data to find what people are really good at and do a better job of aligning people's capabilities and interests to opportunities that may exist within the organization. So it is not, to me, the AI focus is really to understand how businesses could work better and therefore have a more informed, a more informed path to change. And so it's not that business itself will be transformed overnight, but the way we conduct business will get transformed. And that will certainly have a long-term financial impact on the people who will participate. There will be more effective use of the resources, better ability to take risks, because then you'd have a process that is going to back up and say, okay, we take the risk, but how do we find out whether we took the right step or the wrong step? And that will also be informed by the analysis. So this is already happening, and the question is, how can we learn to do it better?
Very important. Just a footnote, since I didn't address the professor at ISB, is if you've understood correctly, for instance, there is a family business professional or a family business professor. He wants to understand how many family businesses use AI. So can he just be connected with the lab, and does that then work for him if he get the data and then start using it? Is it like any faculty from any of the verticals can access it?
When we are looking, I think rather than just being a family business question, let me make it broader. If you look at the University of Chicago, what made it great was that they were the repository of financial databases. And a lot of researchers, not just at the University of Chicago, but worldwide researchers got attracted like bees to honey, data being the honey. And a lot of research therefore ended up happening at the University of Chicago, financial research. Now when we look at what's happening at ISB, our faculty are involved in research related to data that is linked to the Aadhaar card. Our faculty are involved in data that is we get from the Reserve Bank. Reserve Bank has a research institute called CAFRO. We work with them. We have data from the National Stock Exchange. So and we are looking at healthcare area. So as ISB becomes a node, as ISB becomes a node where there's data available, it's not just for our faculty. I think we are, of course, partial to our own faculty. But the idea is to bring other faculty from other institutions, not just Indian institutions, but also global institutions. There's a lot of interest in terms of what is going on. You take the Aadhaar card and the digital transformation of India itself. There's interest from countries like Kenya and so on and so forth. And India can play a leading role in some of these sectors. So the idea really is that this is now I'm talking about the lab.
Yeah.
The tools, our ability to store data, the ability to store data with the right levels of privacy, etc., is going to make ISB a better known anchor with more research coming out. But it is, I think it would be wrong to say that this is for ISB. This has to be for India and the world. That's my position.
Completely support.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to the next question, please.
I understood
a 3-day
Into
program.
the mic, please. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Gurmanal from Business Line newspaper. I understood that it's a 3-day program for CXOs. So how often you want to offer these courses?
At this point, we have this ambitious target of trying to educate about 1,000 CXOs in the next 3 to 4 years, which would imply that we would be running more than 2 or 3, about 2 or 3 cohorts in any given year. So as with any program, I think there's a starting point and a ramp up. So I think we would
cohorts in a month?
No, in a year, right? So to be conservative, we will probably start small and slowly ramp up to reach that target. So that's the goal.
How is it priced?
So the price, we are still talking about it. I don't want to sort of, it will be up on the website soon. So I, don't have a price point at this point.
So at a later stage, will you also consider organizing something like this for level 2 leaders as well?
That is actually the goal. We want to start at the highest level of an organization and then slowly move downwards. But obviously, we are not the technology experts. So we want to stop perhaps at the middle management level. Because beyond that, I suspect we'll have to acquire new types of expertise. But this being a management program, we want to target the top level first and then maybe target the middle management.
So will it be offered at both the campuses?
So that's also a part of the ramp-up plan. For now, it will be offered in Hyderabad.
This is asking this. Anything magical about this 3 days? For journalists, it's so exciting. In 3 days, you can learn so much. So how this 3-day came in here, and you have this wonderful one-year program which is there, and they are all lateral recruits later. They come with work experience and all of them. Many of them today are computer engineers themselves. So is there any thought in terms of incorporating this as a compulsory course at some stage perhaps?
Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a buttonholing journalist perhaps. Yeah, you can gather that. But I'm from Kumar Sharma from Business Today.
Thank you.
You want me to take a shot?
Yeah.
All right. So when we are talking about C-level, chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief executive officer, I think it is hard even to get them for 1 day, and getting them for 3 days itself is going to be a challenge. And but we'll work hard at it. I think what we have to do is convince them about the value that they're going to be getting. So 3 days is going to be a hard sell, but we have a leading company and a leading business school, and if we can't do it, then I don't know who will do it. But there has to be value, for them. And the value is going to be in terms of what does the organization need to do. We're not going to be teaching them any tools or anything like that. What they will be learning are the challenges of that come with the change, with the digital transformation. I can tell you very honestly speaking, if I take off my dean hat and put on my CEO hat for ISB, this is the biggest challenge that we face at ISB. We want digital transformation of ISB itself, our academic processes, our processes for managing workflow, etc. And the hardest thing it is to get people, and this is not just ISB, it'll be at any organization, how do you get people to do something different today compared to what they were comfortable doing yesterday? And the narrative sometimes is that why fix something that isn't broken? Our narrative, I think, is more along the lines that if it's not broken, break it and fix it anyway, so we can move to the next generation. So I want to emphasize that this is about the future, it's about next practices, and it's not just about current management.
Let me just add to this, and I think you raised a very, very valid question. What kind of timeline do you need to learn this, and what will it really give you? I would say I'm a student of artificial intelligence every day, and everybody at Microsoft is exactly the same, because this is such an evolutionary field that we are finding new things in this every day. The entire tech industry globally, all our peer group, is evolving on this on a daily basis. I think the attempt here is not to provide a doctorate in 3 days. So that we should be very clear about. That it is not the end of it, that at the end of 3 days you know it all. It is the ability to get on the journey to learn it all as you move forward. And the ability to imbibe it on a daily basis and at least understand what's happening and bring it into the normal course of our lives and work. So to me, that is the attempt. In 3 days, if you can open the minds to really start thinking about it, then it is 3 days well spent.
Let me start with the media first. Thank you all for coming. I heard it was going to be a rainy morning, so luckily the rain is held up. So thank you very much for coming. I'd really like to thank all the people from Microsoft who made that happen. They've been incredibly open, willing to engage with us with virtually anything. So a very special thanks to them for making this happen. As ISB, we were also thinking about collaboration like this to develop next practices. This was timely. So thank you very much. So I must also thank all the people who worked behind the scenes. So I'd like to thank the respective PR departments. We call them as external relations. They really helped out a lot. The bunch of people standing near the door at this point in time, tucked away at the back. So special thanks to them as well. Our legal departments, they played an incredible role to make it happen. So as opposed to legal departments being talked about as being a very difficult hoop to jump, they were very collaborative and helped us in every sense. So special thanks to them. So there are a couple of people who did a bunch of multiple backflips to make this happen. So one is those two gentlemen ironically are sitting together over there. Ashwini from Microsoft and Sai who made it happen as well. So thank you all for coming as well. So having said all of this, this is just the beginning, right? I mean, let's not get carried away. This is barely the beginning. There's more hard work to be done. But hopefully this is a good start. Thank you.
ఓయ్ ఇంకేంటి నన్ను చూస్తున్నారు? న్యూస్ని న్యూసెన్స్ లేకుండా చెప్పి ఎంటర్టైన్మెంట్ని ఎంజాయ్మెంట్లా మార్చి ఎప్పుడు మీకోసం పనిచేసే మీ FBTVని లైక్ చేయండి, షేర్ చేయండి, కామెంట్ చేయండి. చివరిలో చెప్పడం మర్చిపోయాను, సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయడం అస్సలు మర్చిపోకండి. ఇంకొకటి, కింద గంట సింబల్ ఉంది కదా, దాన్ని గట్టిగా కొట్టండి, నోటిఫికేషన్స్ వచ్చేస్తాయి.